Hi, my name is Kira and welcome to my channel. Today I'll be sharing with you my 6 favorite books of all time. I decided to do this for 2 reasons. One, because this is my first ever booktube video, so I figured it would be a great idea to share my favorites so you watching can know if we have similar tastes or not right away. And 2, because the other day I was looking at my favorite books of all time and I realized I only had 6 books that were actually 5 stars. So I'm going to be looking at those 6 books that I gave 5 stars so that I can try and figure out a pattern so that I can get better at selecting books. Before I tell you my favorite books, when I looked at my Goodreads page to figure out my list of favorite books to share, I actually ended up demoting 3 different books from 5 stars to 4 stars. Just because I demoted them to 4 stars doesn't mean that they aren't still fantastic books and not worth reading. They just didn't feel like they fit in with the rest of the books on this list. I feel like I didn't like them as much. So really quickly, I'm going to show you those 3 books and explain why I ended up bumping them from 5 to 4 stars. 2 of those books are actually both by V.E. Schwab, and that's The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue and A Darker Shade of Magic. I read the 3 books in the trilogy right after each other, and even though I think the first book is the best book in the series, I highly recommend reading this book. The line between this book and the other 2 books, which are right here on my shelf, the line between them is a little bit blurred in my mind, and I feel like moving on in the series, there's a lot of filler that could have been cut back. In my opinion, the whole second book was basically filler. So because of that, this just has been tainted in my mind and I no longer feel like it's a 5-star book, unfortunately. The other book, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, even though I really loved this book when I read it, I even cried when I read it, I think the ending is probably the best part about it. I ended up bumping it from 5 to 4 stars after hearing some common criticisms from other reviewers of this book. The big one being that for Addie LaRue being an immortal being who has her whole life to live, she hasn't done a whole lot with it. She was kind of boring. Both her and the main character just gave a whole lot of go girl give us nothing, which is kind of a bummer. But the book is still beautiful, definitely worth reading, and maybe you'll actually rate it 5 stars, who knows. The third book I bumped, I don't have it here with me, but it was The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. I think I gave this book 5 stars initially because I'm pretty sure it was the first ever romance that I've read and actually liked. And so because of that, I think I liked it more than I thought I did. But since then, I've read a few more romances that I've liked a lot more, and you'll find those later on the list. And with that out of the way, here are my 6 favorite books of all time. Cersei by Madeline Miller. I don't have this book with me because I lent it out to my mom, although I don't think she's ever read it. She's had it for over a year now. I absolutely adored Cersei. I thought Cersei was a very magical reading experience. I loved it cover to cover, and I cried at the end for sure. I loved getting to see Cersei's perspective through all the Greek myths. If you're a fan of Greek myths, you're definitely gonna like Cersei. I grew up reading the Percy Jackson books like so many other people, so I just loved hanging on to Cersei, and I do wish that I knew more about the Odyssey and the Iliad going into Cersei, but I think even only having a really base level vague understanding of those books, you can still really enjoy Cersei. It's a book about female empowerment. It's a book about Cersei coming into her own and doing right by herself and just proving to herself that nobody else's opinion matters. It's an episodic tale as Cersei traipses through all of the different Greek myths that she appears in, and we just see her perspective, and I thought it was really enlightening. And it is kind of an I Hate Men book, but I love a good I Hate Men book. My next favorite book is 1Q84 by Haruki Murakami. This book is a big boy. It is just under 1,200 pages, but I absolutely adored it. This book is so many things in those 1,200 pages. It's magical, it's a mystery, it's a romance, it's a cult book. It's so confusing and yet it makes perfect sense at the same time. It's hilarious and it's heartwarming. And in my opinion, the vibes are absolutely flawless from cover to cover. The 2 main characters are a little bit dubious throughout the story, yet I always found myself rooting for them, trying to find their way through this new world that mysteriously has 2 moons in the sky. Each small reveal in 1Q84 feels like a massive win. This book took me 3 weeks to read, but I savored every single moment of it. Once I finished reading 1Q84, I feel like it left a hole in my heart because I knew that I'm not sure that I will ever find another book that I like as much as 1Q84. And it does make me really excited to read Murakami's other stuff. Dig by A.S. King. I have a lot of thoughts about Dig by A.S. King, but I don't think that anything I say about this book can do it justice compared to the blurb on the back of the book, so I'm just gonna read the Goodreads description to you. It starts like this. The shoveler, the freak. Can I help you? Loretta, the flea circus ring mistress, and first class Malcolm. These are the 5 teenagers lost in the Hemmings family's maze of tangled secrets. only a generation removed from being simple Pennsylvania potato farmers, Gottfried and Marla Hemmings managed to trade digging spuds for developing subdivisions and now sit atop a 7-figure bank account. Wealth they've declined to pass on to their adult children or their teenage grandchildren. Because we want them to thrive, Marla always says. What does thriving look like? Like carrying a snow shovel everywhere. Like selling pot at the Arby's drive-thru window. Like a first-class ticket to Jamaica between cancer treatments. Like a flea circus in a double-wide. Like the GPS coordinates to a mound of dirt in a New Jersey forest. As the rot just beneath the surface of the Hemmings' precious white suburban respectability begins to spread, the far-flung grandchildren gradually find their ways back to each other, just in time to uncover the terrible cost of maintaining the family name. Dig is such a weird book, and that is exactly what I like about it so much. Dig is the story of a family who used to hail from simple potato farmers, but managed to trade in their potato farm for a suburban real estate business. The story follows a group of teenagers who are a few generations removed from their potato farming ancestors as they struggle to make sense of this world they live in. Eventually, they come to understand family as they learn to carry each other's baggage and uncover some other family secrets. Like most of A.S. King's books, Dig has a little bit of surrealism sprinkled throughout the book in a way that I absolutely adored. As I stated, this is a very weird book, but weird in a way that I personally really loved. And what I loved even more about the weirdness of this book was the super beautiful message about family ties that's hidden right under the surface. An absolutely remarkable thing by Hank Green. This is not an absolutely remarkable thing. This is its sequel, A Beautifully Foolish Endeavor, but I don't have an absolutely remarkable thing since I got it from the library. Kind of bugs me that I don't own the first one but own the second one, but I just don't see myself actually buying it. The second one is really good, it's just not as good as the first one. Hank Green, aka TikTok's dad or one half of the Vlog Brother, gives us a science fiction first contact with alien story blended with a really interesting social media commentary. In this book, April May is the first person to discover a giant robot alien that's perched in the middle of Manhattan. She and her friend Andy post a video of the statue online, only to go viral with the news that similar statues, which they have dubbed Carl, have appeared in every major city across the world. Only no one knows how they got there. April is skyrocketed into fame virtually overnight and is now tasked with being the face of advocacy for the Carls everywhere. She also finds herself at the center of a political controversy whilst also being a 23-year-old and not having the skills to cope with her new celebrity status. We watch as a strange dream plagues the world and see the situation escalate, all the while April faces unintended consequences on her personal relationships. This book is a super interesting read, and even though it is a sci-fi, it's very approachable and not at all difficult to get through. Things might look a little bit different right here because I'm actually sitting down and recording for a second time because while I was editing, I realized I skipped a whole book, and it's a book I really love, and I had to sit down and make sure I include it, and that book is We Ride Upon Sticks by Quan Berry. We Ride Upon Sticks is the story of a high school field hockey team who give themselves over to a higher power in order to start winning games. This book really made me miss my days as a student athlete, which is really impressive because I never liked being a student athlete. And yet this book isn't really about the sports at all. It's more so about the collective bond of female friendships that the girls in the book make. Though in this book, the girls believe that there is magic at play, the way they communicate with each other feels a little bit less like magic and a little bit more like how a sports team that has a really fantastic bond would act with each other. There are a lot of characters in this book. Each chapter is from a different teammate's perspective, but all of the characters are present throughout the entire story, and I personally never found it overwhelming. Take a Hint, Danny Brown by Talia Hibbert. Also not Take a Hint, Danny Brown. This is one of the companion books in the series about the 3 Brown sisters. This is Act Your Age, Eve Brown, but I also really recommend Get a Life, Chloe Brown. To top off the list with my favorite romance of all time, Take a Hint, Danny Brown is a fake dating story about Danny Brown, a PhD university student, and Zaf, a security guard at the building she works at. When an image of Zaf rescuing Danny from a fire drill goes viral, the two decide to keep up the ruse to raise awareness for Zaf's budding charity. I personally really related to the fact that Danny is a PhD student. I've always had a dream of getting my PhD, and I'm currently a master's student right now. I also really loved Zaf's gruff exterior and that he's secretly listening to romance audiobooks while at his security job. The two share some classic romance novel miscommunications, and their love story is an absolute joy. If you're looking for light, fluffy, and smutty, this book and the other ones in the series are definitely for you. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, please consider liking and subscribing. This is my first ever fully filmed booktube video, and I am super excited but also really nervous to post it. If any of my favorite books are also your favorite books, please leave a comment down below letting me know which one, or if you have any book recommendations you think I might like, please tell me about those also, because I am desperate for more 5-star reads. Thank you so much for watching. I did it, 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 I did it.